If you are planning a trip to Scotland, chances are you are going to be flying into Edinburgh and wanting to spend a day or two there, and rightly so. It is my favorite city on the planet. In today's video, though, I want to share with you some sights to see and how to group all of the attractions together so that you spend more time enjoying Edinburgh and everything it has to offer and less time retracing your steps, because this is one of the most hilly, mountainous cities there is. Tons of stairways, tons of closes, and you will be absolutely exhausted and worn out from going back and forth if you're constantly zigzagging back and forth across the city. So let's talk about how to see things in the right order to give you your maximum time there. So as I said, very hilly, mountainous area. Edinburgh, it might be somewhat compact and maybe even smaller looking on a map, but it can feel overwhelmingly large when you start having to walk uphill, up to cliffs everywhere. And so it's actually a very vertical city. And that's something that's hard to pick up on a map. So just walking 5 minutes somewhere that looks like it's a short distance or even a shortcut can involve very steep stairs. And a lot of first-time visitors will retrace their steps accidentally, the same ones 3 or 4 times over, trying to navigate it all and getting lost. I actually did myself too on the first trip. I was so exhausted on that first day in Edinburgh. So let me help you avoid that if you are a first timer. So instead of thinking in terms of attractions, we want to think in terms of the neighborhoods. And then, okay, what do I want to do in this neighborhood while I'm here? What do I want to do over here? So on and so forth. I really highly recommend doing a hop-on, hop-off bus, and I mentioned this in my previous video, and there's several different hop-on, hop-off buses. And what this does is you can get a ticket for like the whole day. Some of them you can get packages where it's multiple days, just depending. The one we're looking at, it's $27 a day. Get a voucher, you're gonna hand that voucher to them when you hop on the bus, and then you can just catch a ride wherever you want to go. It's going to take you in a certain route, and they usually take like about an hour if you do the whole circle and their entire route that they're making. But you can check where all they're going and strategize where you want to start, and just honestly, you could get off at each stop and go see which sites you want to do at each one. They're not always going to take you directly to every attraction you want to go to, and there's going to be some stops where the bus can't get on and through, especially in areas close to the Edinburgh Castle, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. For the most part, you can kind of figure out a place that's going to be nearby certain regions. That is my best recommendation I have to give, especially if you have mobility issues. Otherwise, if you just want to walk it all, go for it, but you want to probably approach it the same way like the buses do, where you have a certain stop and a certain region. You tackle all the sites in that region and then you move on to the next one. And now let's start talking about everything to do in Edinburgh and how it is all divided up. So usually when you're coming to visit Edinburgh, most people are going to want to go to Old Town. That's where the heart of all of the history lies and a lot of the attractions are. There are some outer areas though people might want to visit, like out in Leith on the water, and this is where the Britannica is. So you can have a whole tour there on the Royal Yacht and do a tour, and that's way outside of the city. So things like that. And of course there's several other little towns right outside of Edinburgh that are also day trips from Edinburgh too. And I'm gonna have a whole other video just sharing the day trips from Edinburgh too. You've also got the Royal Botanical Garden that's a little bit north of kind of your main center city too. They have a beautiful display at Christmas time and the holidays. The Christmas lights, beautiful area, lots of gardens there, but they're not like right in the heart of the city center. There's some other things and attractions you might want to do while you're there, but they're not as focused downtown. So we're going to focus mostly on the city center today. By the way, a lot of folks, they're coming in from the airport, so just letting you know the airport is way further like west of Edinburgh, of the city center. So when you come in on the airport, it's not like you're gonna just be right there in the heart of the district. You're gonna have to take an Uber or catch the buses in. It's a good 20-30 minutes of a ride into the historical center. We're gonna go straight to talking about the Royal Mile, which is truly like the heartbeat, I think, of Edinburgh. It is about a mile, give or take some, but thus called the Royal Mile. And this runs somewhat east and west through the city, but it's on the very top of a big hill. Just letting you know, it's up on a cliff, very elevated. That is what you're trying to get to, and it is a steep walk up the hill to get to Royal Mile. Royal Mile has Edinburgh Castle on the west end at the furthest top, and Holyrood Palace at the east end, a little lower. So I'm going to talk in terms of upper Royal Mile and lower Royal Mile, and then maybe middle Royal Mile. So around the middle is kind of close to the half-mile mark, I suppose you could say. And along this whole stretch that runs about a mile is just truly where all the history lies, and so many things to do along this mile. Should you just walk the whole mile and check everything out? Yes, that is one strategy. You could just start at one end and walk down across the whole thing to the other. There's a castle at each end, but each castle you could spend 2 to 3 hours at least inside of, and you do want to get tickets ahead of time. Not something I would show up to the day of, because these tickets do sell out, especially Edinburgh Castle. You definitely want to book your Edinburgh Castle tickets way in advance. So those are two big, huge attractions. You can spend half a day at each palace, to be honest with you. And then there are several museums that you could spend some time in too along the way also. So we can kind of share what is at each mark along that mile. And so that's what we'll talk about first. The Upper Royal Mile first. Of course, we start with Edinburgh Castle, and this is definitely an experience you kind of just have to do. This is really a castle going back to ancient times. There were first forts built on this hill, and the Romans built, I think, in the area. And then it goes back to like King Malcolm. It really wasn't even a castle back then. It started really getting built under King David's time. And so within the castle, you're going to see a beautiful view at the top. First of all, you're going to see the battery with the cannons. You're going to see the royal chambers. So you are going to see some history from Mary Queen of Scots. You're going to see her quilt. You're going to see the royal jewels. You can't take pictures, so I don't have any photography of that. And you're going to see the birthplace of King James VI, where he was born, and the room he was born in. And you're going to see the great dining hall from King James as well. There are other museums a part of it too. You're going to see St. Margaret's Chapel, King David's mother, who was King Malcolm's wife. There's a lot of history to see here. So certainly recommend it. I mean, most people coming are going to want to tour this castle. I have a video already out there from my first trip for a full tour of it and some history, so you can check that out if you're interested. Like I said, you're going to want to get tickets, and usually the tickets are set for a certain time. So you will have to kind of arrange your day around that time that you set. As you start coming down the hill, so Edinburgh Castle is the one that's at the very top of the hill, overlooking everything. As you start coming back down it, there's also the Scotch whiskey experience. Of course, if you want to go sample all the Scottish whiskey, which is huge in Scotland, this is one place where you can do it right outside the castle there. And then right after that is the Writers Museum. This is beautiful. So this features a lot of the famous writers in Scotland: Robert Burns, Sir Walter Scott, and Robert Louis Stevenson. But it's just overall, it's beautiful architecture too. I love the style of this home, just gorgeous. So I think that's another really neat experience. And then we kind of start to move into the middle area of the Royal Mile. This is truly like the heart, because this is where there was a public square back in the day, and a lot of the proclamations were made here in historical Edinburgh. So this is really where I think you just have to visit, as like when you think of the city of Edinburgh, it's like right in this spot, right outside St. Giles Cathedral at the Mercat Cross, right where the old Parliament buildings lie. Also, right behind this little Mercat Cross, you can stomp on the grave of John Knox, who was leader of the Protestant Reformation. Not the nicest guy. A lot of women don't like him. So a fascinating spot to go to. But so much history here, and of course a visit inside St. Giles Cathedral, so worth it. So much just beauty inside there, the beautiful cathedral, and the top of this dome is what you're going to see Everywhere else in the city, when you see that pointed dome, that is the St. Giles Cathedral. It's like the center of the city. The skyscape is just stunning, and it is that point of the St. Giles Cathedral that you're seeing. And this was built under King David. So much history here as well. Much to see inside there and explore. The real Mary King's Close. So this is where you're going to go for a lot of the tours in the underground vaults, the area where a lot of the city's poor lived, basically. When the plague hit, a lot of the plague victims were exiled below, including children. Lots of creepy things down there. We did get to explore it on our ghost tour at night. It's very creepy. And Witch Hunter lived down there under King James as well as some of the city's accused witches. So this is a fun little tour you can do. That's where it's going to be located. Now, you do have the connection of Cockburn Street right around here as well. Cockburn connects from the Royal Mile way down the hill back down towards Princess Street. So we'll talk about Princess Street in a little bit, but this is beautiful as well. And there's a lot of little quaint shops and restaurants all along here. So very worth a stroll down there, but it's a hike if you're coming from the other end and you're going up the hill to Royal Mile. It's also a hike down the hill if you're heading back into the newer parts of the city, or, you know, back to Princess Street. So something that you may want to do is look at the top of the street for a little while and save the bottom piece for when you're back towards Princess Street or ready to go back in that direction. Then as you walk further down the Royal Mile, you're going to come upon the Children's Museum. This just features some of the old toys from the 18th to the 21st century. And then we come upon the John Knox house. So this was the house where John Knox actually lived, his primary residence. A little museum set up to learn more about him as well. So he was huge in Scottish history and in just the Protestant Reformation. From there, I'd say somewhere around there, a little bit east of that now, we move on towards what I would call Lower Royal Mile, and this is going to start taking you towards like the Canongate area. One stop along the way is the People's Story. This just shows you kind of how people lived back in the day, and so it's one of those museums that showcases the lives of the residents, but it was also the old Tolbooth jail. So you're going to see some neat things here. And then the Museum of Edinburgh, right by this spot, if you go back down the little alleyway behind this, is the scene from where Claire goes back in time in season 3 and finds Jamie again in the show Outlander at his print shop. So this was a big scene for me. I had to go visit it. So just letting you know, this is also a pretty fun Outlander site. But the Museum of Edinburgh will showcase a lot of the history of the city of Edinburgh. It is. So then we come up towards Holyrood Palace. Before that, though, is the Canongate Kirk. And in this like graveyard is supposedly the body of David Rizzio. I think there's some speculation on this. Some say no, it's Holyrood Abbey, which is right next to the palace. David Rizzio was basically the secretary for Mary Queen of Scots, who was murdered in Holyrood Palace before her eyes. So I really want to go see if I can find the spot, but there is some speculation over that. But of course, there's Holyrood Palace, which this is still a working palace and a modern day palace, and the royal family comes here. Sometimes it's closed if they are in town, and so it's something you do want to get tickets and make sure there's availability. But there's a lot of history here from Mary Queen of Scots as well. At the moment, they're offering tickets on being able to see Queen Elizabeth II's private apartments too. So there's a few different things you can do there, but overall you can get general admission to see just some of this other history. It's open from like 9:30 to 4:30. This is one where the tickets, you don't have to have a specific time. It just gets you in for the day for the general entry. So that's something that makes it a little bit easier. But that kind of wraps up everything along the Royal Mile. And there are some shops. There's retail along the way, places where you can shop for tartans. There's places where you can eat. There's coffee shops, there's tea, there's pubs. So a little bit of everything along that stretch. So the Royal Mile definitely, I would say, is your top priority when visiting Edinburgh. But again, it's going to be at the very top of the hill. So now let's think about other areas. I'm going to stick with where we've ended here on the east side, lower Royal Mile, and a couple of other things somewhat in this area. Still a bit of a walk, and these are probably going to be more for folks ready to walk to get to it, and it's going to be for hiking anyway. So for those with limited mobility like myself, not quite as favorable. One is going to be Arthur's Seat. So Arthur's Seat is like this big mountainous volcano. It is a place people hike, and you can see it up behind Holyrood Palace. Now, this was just recently on fire, just last week. And so it is all just brown char at the moment. I think by September when we're back, it'll probably be growing back and, you know, back to its original state. I know it was closed after this fire. It might still be closed right now, but hopefully it'll be open again soon. This one seems to catch fire quite a bit. I did hear that Holyrood was affected a little bit by it, but I think everybody's okay. So hopefully everything will be back to normal. But this is a great little hike with spectacular views at the top. So this is something people like to do if you're looking for a hike. Now up there are ruins as well to see, some going back from the Mesolithic and Neolithic times, as well as St. Anthony's Chapel. You have a couple of springs. There's kind of a park area. They have St. Margaret's Well there and St. Anthony's Well. There's also Cotton Hill. This is a little more north. It is designed in Greek architecture, basically. It's like a acropolis. It actually was supposed to be a monument for the soldiers who died in the Napoleon Wars. But what this offers is just a spectacular view of the city. And also it's used a lot for observing the night sky, like for astronomy. So beautiful shot. You see this in a lot of the pictures. So these are all kind of all over in that area. And nearby this area too is St. James Quarter, which houses the Poop Hotel. That's what I call it. I can't remember what the locals call it. I heard they have a name for it. This is the W Edinburgh Hotel. It's actually a luxury hotel, but it is shaped like poop. It was dubbed Lifestyle Luxury Hotel of the Year, but like off in the distance, what it looks like is a giant poop emoji with the little swirl at the top. So pretty funny. So that's located over there too. I mean, I feel like I've got to get a classic picture of the Poop Hotel. Now that we've covered kind of more of the east end, let's go back over towards the west end because I still want to stick with a little more old town, more historical areas before we head over more to the newer spots and the more retail, the more mainstream spot everybody knows and comes to along Prince Street. So let's talk about more of the Grassmarket area. Now, this is something you can walk to, but this is going to start being way downhill coming from the Royal Mile. If you want to go straight to Grassmarket from the castle area, you're going to go straight down a cliff, straight downstairs, a very steep, steep, steep drop. So you can choose that route, which is neat, but it's going to be a straight drop. Or you can kind of head back towards the Royal Mile and start heading more south from the middle of the Royal Mile, kind of along the George Bridge. Along there, you're going to find Victoria Street. Victoria Street is a beautiful little alleyway also that's going to connect streets too. And this is just a beautiful little view. You can have lunch or, you know, some shops along the way, some restaurants in there, but it's definitely worth a visit because it's just a gorgeous view. And it was, of course, supposedly inspired Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter books. I had to have breakfast along here. I had a delicious quiche and it was a beautiful view. So definitely worth a stop along the way. And also along the way, you'll find the Elephant House where J.K. Rowling sat often to write the books too. It was not open at the time that I went. It could be open now, so we'll see. It'd be great to have coffee in there. It'd be awesome. Or tea, because they do tea more in the UK. You'll keep walking and you'll come to the Greyfriars Kirk area. I don't know if I want to say this is exactly in Grassmarket, but it's kind of along the way to Grassmarket and in the same general area. This is a gorgeous cemetery and the church. Beautiful views too. You have a lot of the names inspired by the Harry Potter series here as well, including Tom Riddle. And it's also a great place for the haunted tours. We came there on the haunted tours as well because there's a lot of good ghost stories. There was body snatching that happened here, and it also housed the dungeon or the little gate that imprisoned the Covenanters. A lot of history in this cemetery to see. And then this also is where the Greyfriars Bobby, the little dog that's kind of the legend around, who was very loyal to his owner and guarded his gravestone for like 14 years. So everybody likes to go by the statue there and rub his little nose. Although apparently you're not really supposed to rub his nose, but everybody does it apparently. And then right across from Greyfriars, there's also the National Museum of Scotland. So this is a huge building, multiple stories, tons of things to see, artifacts. So you could spend a lot of time there as well. And of note, there's also the National Library of Scotland too, which supposedly has some works from Charles Darwin, as well as the last letter that Queen Mary of Scots wrote too. So I was kind of fascinated about it. And then you head towards square area. This has a lot of pubs. It has the market there. And I love this view where you have, it reminds me of like Rapunzel's tower with like the flowers sprinkling down. There's this little pub right there with the view of Edinburgh Castle in the background. But this is a really neat area because it's where they did a lot of the hangings. So this has a lot of history around here too. It's also got the famous viewpoint on the little narrow stairs of Edinburgh Castle. It's called the Vinnell viewpoint. So just another great like Instagram shot. So the Grassmarket area, you're gonna find that a little more south of the castle, but then we come back north of the castle. So now we start heading more closer towards Newtown. You have what's called Princess Street, and this is kind of your main thoroughfare. This is where Waverley Station is on one end, the bus station. So a lot of the buses are going to come in here. And you also have the Walter Scott Monument right there. Then you have Prince Street Gardens, which is a big greenway, but it's kind of down in like a trough area. And so again, another cliff down. So it's like the castle's up on a cliff, and then on the sides of it's like a cliff downwards. But your Princess Street Gardens is just this main beautiful big park basically. And they of course have the Ross Fountain with this just epic view as well. And then all along Princess Street Gardens are just a lot of restaurants, a lot of retail and shops. And then you start heading more towards Newtown. Up there you've got St. Andrew's Square, but it's not quite as much of the history as in Old Town. And then of course on the outskirts, there's Dean Village, there's Stockbridge and those surrounding areas, but I wouldn't say there's as many historical things to do there. There are just some extra villages you can visit too. So I would probably cut it off here because I was focused more on the center city. So that's everything today. I hope that was actually helpful, just keeping it grouped by the activities and different locations and plan accordingly. And of course, choose your restaurants and where you're going to eat from where you're going to be rather than trying to find a particular restaurant way back across the city again. So if you want to see more Scotland travel, I have a whole playlist out there so you can check it all out to help you with your trip planning, and I've got more on the way. We're going to do some day trips from Edinburgh as well. I'm definitely bringing you along on this second trip, so definitely stick around and pop the subscribe if you want more help with your planning, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Bye.